Ngalakin Khadijan Nyunga Boja.
For the first airport, forest field to airport project, these boxes are the rooms within a train station. So I did the structured cabling. The requirement was connect, say, electrical room, these many devices, provide these many spares, comply with these standards. Very simple system. So we went there, and then turns out this room didn't exist. So they called me, Ruby, what do we do? So because I can't just say, okay, don't install it because we're going to get paid. But there was a room, new room, VT plant room, apparently. So this was the outcome, that instead of that room doesn't exist, we will send these cables to this room, and then so this room, SER, okay, no. So basically, anybody can start this change construction because it's not constructible. That's why it's good to go to site, so you gain some practical experience. So that's why going old is good, because you have all that knowledge. Your designs get better and better and better. And then, or the customer, their engineers also visit site, and they say, I know we approved that, but do you mind moving this? Because I feel like this is not a good idea. That's when you're like, okay, let's check. We do our assessment. Is it going to cost me anything? No, okay. Yeah, we'll change that. So these things, so ultimately get stamped. These are also recent, that's why I brought them here, but these are not stamped, but something like that. So formal copies of something similar, red lines. What else? Okay, so this is another mine site. This is a train line, and then another. These are the 4 enclosures. It's got signaling and telecom equipment in the big one. These are batteries, and I think this is just control systems, antennas. We built that ages ago. I wasn't even working in that company then. So then this is the as-built design done in 2014, so not that long. Revised, actually. First it was handed over in 2012, then made some changes in 14. So this is just the top layout. This is what we were looking at. Cabinet 2, 1, B, and B. This is just a cabinet layout. Battery 1, battery 2, the other cabinet, just the solar power. Then the actual cabinet, which looks like this. So this is the as-built version of this drawing. Say these are 2 radios. These are 2 radios here. That's pretty much it. 3 o'clock. So I think I don't want to scare you with any more. Okay, that's it. Question?
In the slide deck, can you go to that diagram with the review process? Yes. So when you're checking for compliance, when you comparing it to the various standards, is it that or more? What are you checking?
Okay, very good question. So requirements, you know what requirements are, right? So when we have a contract, the contract, let's say for your system, they were kind enough to give us a separate document, which, to give you an example, for Forest Field Airport line, for telecoms there was 1,200 pages. So we have a team called, for project that scale, we have a team called multiple contract managers. They put every line in an Excel sheet. Every chapter or every subsection, say structured cabling, will be in one tab, another. So then against that becomes our compliance matrix. For every line, we write down, that's pre-bid, before we even win the project. We go through every line item and go comply, not comply, partially comply. So that's how the contract is signed. It's up to the customer. They may accept some non-compliance because they're not in Australia. There are not many options for companies, but so that's what makes the basis of whether we comply or not. And that's when the independent verifiers will check against as well. Okay.
Right.
All right.
I think we should move on to the next session anyway.
Okay.
Let's thank Ruby for coming and her experience. So let me shut this down. Or yeah.
But often that it means that doing the school on that's where you're trying to lay it out. Someone can actually try.
That's why we have the drawings in the it's just a blank line.
Yeah, you just have to know that
And there's a done.
almost the top of the person and being cruise and walk along and go, there's a ridge there, so it's got a train along and go, there's a gully there, the track is going to roll over, and so we can't go on that, then we've got a train.
Perhaps civil. But for comms, we get notified that we will this code. We're gonna, these are assignments. So wherever the file is generated, then you put in a file test, and then the test will be the test
Scary stuff happens. There's a company called Terraform, and they do scary. Very nice talk. Good.
Thanks, Ruby. Now I'm going to figure out how to.
None of that was part of my engineering education. So we never got down to hardcore engineering.
That's why I wanted to actually know these things. Not that they are succeeding, but when we go there,
Yeah, just
like starting from scratch, this is how we do it. Now they can
Okay, Adrian, you want to start your session? Okay. For some reason, it's not letting me close the Zoom. It's running. Okay, I'm going to have to figure that out after the session.
So anyone who was in here, we ran a bit over. If you want to go and grab a drink of water, a quick coffee or something, let me know before we launch in the next year. Sitting behind for 2 hours. Get up, stretch, touch your toes, do something. That's your compensate the moment.
No, it was good. Why? Has Zoom started? Good. Zoom up. Good. All right. Sorry, I'm just trying to find a document. Who's got? Do we know if Craig Williams' recording's gone up from last week? Did you get the email about all of our recordings have been moved on to the ecosystem? Okay. Yeah, good. Okay, good. Okay. So, do you want to get any questions? Otherwise, I'm just going to bang on. Craig Williams, I thought, did a really excellent job last week. So a couple of questions have come up on the discussion board. Two that I can't answer that I'm just in the process of sending off to Craig Williams. So if there's any more, please put them up there, flag them as questions about either Gallagher or what was it called, Unicard, and then we'll flag them and send them off to Craig. Again, I will remind you when you're submitting technical queries, I cannot answer them unless each technical query has been given a technical query number. Okay? Ultimately, and Delucia will correct me if I'm wrong, the technical queries go into your report, yes? Yep, and does it form some form of assessment?
Yes, at the end.
Okay, and so if you ask me a question and it doesn't have a technical query number, it has to go into your register without a number, and then we get to look at it and go, what's this? Okay, so obey the rules of asking the technical question. Ask me a technical question, supported by evidence, provide me with, we've had a discussion, these points came up. It was confusing because we've got this evidence or this evidence. So our question is blah, right? Okay, so form a reasoned question, assign it a technical query number, and we'll address it. Okay, so, but make sure that it's coming out of a question from the team and not a question from an individual. Because once the individual asks the question, then it's a question from the team and has to go into the team technical query register because it's been asked. And technically any questions that you're asking here need to go on your own technical query register. So fire me a question by all means, but make sure you write it down, make sure there's a reason for the question, and then log it on your technical query register so you can cite it as, this was the question I asked, and this is the answer Adrian gave me. If you made a decision based on an answer that we never gave you, we may go, how did you come to this conclusion? Oh, well, we just figured it. We just decided to do this, but we didn't ask anyone. Well, why not? That was a pretty important question to ask that should have been asked, right? So get those questions out there, Is it Ruby? Ruby, if a client has issued with the requirement, your requirements, and you go ahead and do your design, and you go through that compliance check at some point, You don't want to get to the point where you're calling in the lawyers to, resolve the dispute between you and the client with, we've addressed what the client wanted, and the client saying, no, you haven't, you've misinterpreted what I said. So it's that picture of the, I don't have the picture up at the moment, connected, of the, what the client wants is a swing, and what you deliver is a tyre on a swing. It's not necessarily a swing, a tyre on a tree, sorry. Well, I'm just talking without reason here. Requirements document is due when?
This Friday.
Everyone know that? Unit coordinator shouldn't be the first one to answer that question.
Supervisors have been telling me to.
Good. I just want to make sure that the message is getting out there.
And it's on the schedule.
Really good. Come on. There's my work. We'll see. Come on. It's hard not to work.
Questions here? Any questions online?
Questions online? Hey, there it is.
Okay, here's a question. Do we know the max power rating of the equipment? Is 10 kilowatt single phase a reasonable assumption, or we need to
Someone, so just to review again, is 10 kilowatt a reasonable estimate? Someone calculate for me at 240 volts, single phase, what 10 kilowatts is? Sorry? About 50. 50 amps? Have you used equipment worth 50 amps? No, no. Can anyone tell me what a normal PowerPoint is? All the options, 20? Anyone else? 10, 15, 20, somewhere in that range. You can generally specify that to your electrical contractor when they come by your house. They'll put in a 10, 15, generally 20 is pretty high end. I don't know much above 20. Is that reasonable? Yep. So you can work it out from there. But much more than that, you're going much above 20 amps single phase, most equipment moves to what? Any? Three phase. You guys have studied three phase? Star, delta, configs, stuff. Right? So, three phase, high power. How are you going to deal with it? You move to three phase, the voltage is a lot higher, so the current can come down. You get more power. So, high power equipment, really high power equipment, moves to three phase. So, we're kind of excluding three phase at this point because if a piece of equipment is three phase, sorry, I've got to put my microphone on. It's a very loud microphone. Any equipment that's rated as three phase is going to have some serious training associated with it in any case. So there's only a really limited range of people who would be using it. All right, my computer is really not having fun today. It's connecting. Oh, I know what I've got to do. Oh, it's like this. Oh, it's going to give me a headache. Why don't I do that? Come on, keep asking some questions. Oh, sorry, go for it. Yeah. No, I'm hearing you. So, as a baseline, you need a minimal viable product. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, you can't add more complexity if you don't have the basics. So, offering me, here's I've made you a hoverboard. I just can't actually have anyone physically make it. Is not much of a point. All right. So, I need. Hoverboard works. So give me a minimal viable product, certainly, but there's scope in the requirements for value. So I can't remember the language that I used, but there's what's the purpose? What's the purpose of this thing? What's the function? What are we trying to do with the widget? What's my ultimate goal? What do you interpret as my ultimate goal? Yeah. Why do I want to do this? It sounds like a lot of work. Why would I bother to even do this at all? What am I trying to do better? Control access to equipment. Why do I want to do that? Am I just trying to be a pain? What's probably my underlying reason for doing it? Sorry? Big one up there? Safety. I love safety. Anything else? Sorry, you were about to say? Better user experience. Is it a better user experience for me to go up to an oscilloscope where I could just push a button and use it, or swipe in to use it? Now, it sounds like a more complicated user experience to me. So I think safety is a big one. Why would I do this? Why would I even bother to do this? Right? You've got to understand my motivation. I'm not trying to come up with a fictional product just to make your life hell. Okay? If someone goes to use that oscilloscope that isn't authorized to use it, what could happen? They could break it. Thank you. Okay, so it's not harm, physical harm, but it's certainly a cost to our business. That is, I've got 20 students coming into this lab and 19 oscilloscopes now. I had 20, but the last person came in here and decided that they were going to apply 240 volts into a 100 volt input onto the oscilloscope because they didn't read the max voltage input on it. They weren't trained appropriately. So the oscilloscope one's a simple one where my safety bit I want to protect is me and the operations of my space. But a drill press, which is the image I had, clearly I'm trying to protect the user. You shouldn't be using this drill press if you haven't been appropriately trained. So think about the context of it, because there's a lot that, as a client, I've put into the requirements. I want all this stuff, okay? But what am I actually trying to do fundamentally? And then, what else is in there that I really also want? Make sense? But good question. Sorry, there was another question. Hand up somewhere over there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. So in the weekly meeting with supervisors, there was some confusion about whether the risk register goes into the requirement report or not. Apparently, some groups in the past have done it in the appendices, others haven't. There's not a clear marking rubric that requires it. So the reason one clarification is that was how we
The risk register is marked in two aspects. Number one.
Sorry, the question was around, is the risk register a requirement for the report?
No, not for the report itself, right? So if you look at the marking rubrics, there are two places where the risk register being present is assessed. Number one is your files, Microsoft Teams files assessment, so your file management. The other aspect is in your notebooks, you should have been incorporating some of the risk analysis that you've been doing. So in your meetings, if you've been talking about risks, if you've been discussing risks, if you've been thinking about risks, what you've been doing in that aspect needs to have gone into your notebook. And if you look at the notebooks, I think there are two rubrics, one for the first 6 weeks and one for the last 6 weeks. I think it's in the first 6 weeks that the risk analysis, risk review is documented in the notebooks.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Yep. Good questions. Okay. I can't encourage you enough. That is a fantastic question, although, there's a section on the discussion board about questions about the unit and about the technical queries. That one could have certainly gone into the unit. Never trust the person next to you. That's my message. Or never trust what someone did last year too. Also, big one, right? So hearsay about, I hear this has got to be in the report, right? Right? Forget all of that, right? Horse's mouth, right here, okay? Delucia says it. That's what you want. If it's in the rubric, if it's online, that's the truth. That's the ground truth. But be careful. We always encourage people to talk and collaborate, all of that stuff. But too often, I hear students talking to other students about what they think should be in it because someone said something else. Yeah, never. If you're uncertain, always just ask. Here's my fabulous image of what the customer wants and what people deliver. Keep going, ask questions. I had some slides on that. What were some of the other slides I had on product life cycle? There's some slides I didn't get to ages ago. Diagrams, yeah, you saw some today from Ruby. Please really think about how you're laying out your story. I can't encourage you enough. So, at no stage do I expect circuit diagrams at the requirements stage. You saw Ruby putting up images of the kind of the scoping document where she was at. It's a line going to a box, right? That represents. Oh, this is the entire 50 kilometres of fibre optic cable, right? None of the details about how it was ploughed into the ground. Goes into a box here that has patch here, patch here. No details about what kind of connector that was, right? It was a really high-level scoping out, right? So you start out with really high-level scoping out documents, and we often call these kind of functional block diagrams or system diagrams, and they tend to be boxes that describe functions and arrows that describe the flow of information. Right, and that's kind of where you should be starting with kind of laying things out. Visual representations should not be underestimated. You know, don't think if I just write more words that'll be better. Beautiful images really can convey a lot. So, you know, think about what this system looks like, you know, just represented as a series of boxes that exchange information and what are the functions of the boxes, and then at various points you would then drill down into those boxes looking at deeper and deeper levels of what's inside them, but never, at least at this stage and in this unit, not to the stage where we're looking at the schematic diagrams, right? You wouldn't be going, here's the circuit board that I've designed for this thing. That's not the purpose of what we're doing with this design unit. We're mainly looking at, you know, things like flow diagrams. You know, how does things need to communicate rather than the actual writing of code, for example. So there's a myriad of different diagrams that you can use to lay systems out. This is less relevant, but I think it's an important one when looking at specs. You'll often come across part numbers when dealing with various bits and pieces. And whenever you're dealing with part numbers never change unless there's a change to form, fit or function. They're the kind of F cubed. If you change the form, the fit or its function. If it functions differently, it has a different part number. If it physically if the pins physically don't fit in, if it's not pin-to-pin compatible, then it doesn't have the same part number. Right? And the form of the object is not the same as it was previously, right? Made of plastic versus made of metal kind of thing, then it's got a different part number. So part numbers should not change for items that are effectively identical in their form, fit or function. So be careful of that when you're looking at technology. I thought I'd give a point about writing, because at some point you're going to write documents. Please don't just subscribe to Grammarly. It won't do it for you. My kids have all uninstalled Grammarly. They say they hate it now. It's just fears. Sorry? Yeah, they just say it gets in the way. You can get just as much value from Word. It just doesn't help them up. But everyone's different. Your best friend is honestly a grammar book. I'm 30 years since doing my PhD, and probably learnt most of my writing in the 4 years of my PhD, and then the 30 years since then. And it is a never-ending process. I just finished writing a grant, 101 pages or whatever, right, for this grant. And my colleague reads it, and she goes berserk. There's a core 10 pages that describes the actual project. Zs. You've used Zs everywhere. I hate Zs. Get rid of Zs. In Australia, we don't use Zs. Right? Minimise is with an S, not with a Z. And you might think, this is really pathetic, right? Right? Who cares about whether it's an S or a Z? But if you put the person off who's reading your work, then you're not doing yourself any favours. So someone's reading the work and they're just trying to get your information, and instead of focusing on the information, they're focusing on, you know, you've used Zs. Why are you using Zs? So my colleague's mad about picking on Zs. That's Gia. She's always picking on me for that. So again, watch your apostrophes in the use of possessives and plurals. Its is a classic one. It is equals its with an apostrophe. Its is the possessive one without the apostrophe. And in general, there's a better example. Where is it? Yeah, things like the use of it, this, and that. Some nice examples that I pulled out of a book. Did I cite the book on the previous page? There it is. Elements of Style by William Shrunk. And in fact, I put a link in the section on the, is it on the document submission information section? I think it's in that portion. There's a whole section on a couple of YouTube talks about, you know, good writing techniques, and he references this book by Elements of Style by William Shrunk. And it's an excellent book. It's been referred to by many academics here that I've worked with. So go and have a look at it. There's now available. There's a link from the library, and I'll put the link up on LMS as well. But it's just got some nice, simple rules, you know, and if all you do is you walk away from every unit that you've ever done where you had to write a report and you pick up 1 or 2 different writing rules, then pretty much at the end of your degree you'll actually have quite a few mistakes corrected in your writing, right? Everyone's got to, you've got to get to the point where fortunately most engineers, there's a tradition of engineers not doing well in their ATAR English. I think there's this belief, oh, if you're studying engineering you probably didn't get a great score for English.
In first year, I decided I came to engineering because I no longer want to write essays.
Yeah, and it's the worst decision you ever made, because all you do, traditional engineer's life is writing reports. And when you're not writing reports, it's important to know that what you're doing is you're reading someone else's reports. Okay? And so when you're reading someone else's reports, the purpose is to give them feedback. And that feedback is around clarity. Have they expressed clearly what they were trying to express in a sentence? And again, my classic example is the use of things like it's, this and that. So you'll often have a sentence you say, the heart is the central organ in our bodies. It is used to pump oxygen around the body. And the question is, what does it refer to? Does it refer to the heart, or does it refer to our bodies, or does it refer to organ? Right? Now, in this sentence, you kind of know, it's the heart is the central organ of the body, and you know it refers to heart. But if the Z80 microprocessor is the central major processing unit within the TRS-80 computer, it is used blah, blah, blah. Now, what does it refer to? If you've got a really technical, difficult sentence, that was a throwback from my early years of computing. If you've got a really technical sentence using words like it, this, and that to refer to nouns or compound clauses in the previous sentence can lead to confusion. I don't know what you mean in the last sentence. And the answer is, just don't write it out. Just don't use those particular forms of writing. So rather than saying it is used to pump oxygen, you write the heart is used to pump oxygen. Instead of saying more and more people are discovering that Tai Chi is one of the most valuable forms of exercise. This has led to, just right, the value of Tai Chi in people's life. This has led to a big demand for classes. So get rid of the this and actually write out the noun or the compound clause in your sentence. And what it does is it makes your writing really clunky. It makes your writing read in a way that you would never say it out loud. And that's fine. It's a technical report, right? It doesn't have to be a poem. What it has to be is absolutely sound in the information that it's given, right? And avoid at every stage any chance for ambiguity. So that's the challenge with writing. It is not trying to make an essay. It's trying to make something that has clarity. That's your goal, right? So when we put you in teams of 6 or 10 or 2 or whatever, you're working in teams and someone writes a section, it is everyone else's job in that team to read that section and give feedback to whoever wrote it and say, here's some feedback. I didn't understand what you were trying to say. Maybe you could just reverse those words. It might make it clearer. Or there's a lot of words in there. Could you just shorten the sentence by saying blah? Is this what you're trying to say? That kind of feedback is fantastic, and I live for that. If I can get my colleagues to read my work and give me that feedback, my writing always gets better. It's a matter of just me getting my colleagues' time and having them read my 10-page grant and giving me the feedback. But you're in these teams for a reason. So please give your colleagues, the benefit of your thoughts about their writing. And don't think for a second that if English is your second language that you don't have a right to do that. Most likely your approach to grammar is much more rigorous than someone's who's using the English language and speaking it and then kind of writing it like they speak. So, I appreciate everyone's point of view, take everyone's feedback, and hopefully everyone's writing gets better. It's like I say, 30 years later, my writing is still crap, but I'll work on it.
Some of the worst writing I've seen is from people who've been born and lived here.
Yeah.
So people who like writers tend to overdo it and improve their writing skills. So don't worry.
Yeah. People who can speak 2 languages, way better at writing and constructing sentences, because they can see, the construction of information in a sentence from 2 language perspectives. But often our native speakers speak 1 language, English, they write, and it's not challenged enough. So again, in these teams of 6, everyone's got something to contribute, and ask people for their feedback. It's, and be open to it. Don't be like, oh, that's wrong. Listen to people's feedback and go, oh yeah, okay, that could be work. It's hard work taking feedback from people and not taking it personally, all right? So it's everyone's feedback is only ever designed to help, right? And at the end of the day, you can always choose to not accept the feedback, but it's always useful to at least consider. Other ways, how can you improve your reports? Writing is really, I can't say enough. You have to write lots and early. That's the other thing with the reports. I know, standard thing, leave it to the last minute. You'll all be up to midnight the night before the report's due. You'll be like talking on some kind of social media thing about, oh, is this, how do we do this? Well, okay, right. Try and if you've got a section of the report that you're trying to put together, get it into the hand of your other team members early enough for them to read and give you some feedback on. If it's the night before, it's very hard for them to read it and give you detailed feedback in enough time for you to make any changes to it. I say to my thesis students at the moment, so I've got about 10 final year thesis students, and they're probably about 5 weeks away from submitting their thesis after a whole year's work. And I say, if you don't get me your thesis to read and give you feedback from, you're probably going to take a penalty of between 10 and 20% in your final grade. That's your choice. And every year, probably about 50% of my students don't get me a copy of their thesis. So I can't give them feedback. And they probably take a penalty of about 10, 20% because they frame things in a really confusing manner. And they're not giving someone enough chance to go, I didn't get it. Could you just rework this section? And if they don't rework that section before they send it off to someone who's going to assess it, because all our theses are assessed by someone, it's not me, individual supervisors don't assess their own students, so an independent grader is going to read that work and not understand it, at which point they're going to get a grade for that, okay? So, use people as often as possible to give you feedback, and that means writing early, getting it on the email. Here's my writing. Could you give me some feedback from it? Just get your pen marker, scribble it up, or use your PowerPoint and edit it and do whatever. Anyone got any good tools that they use to work collaboratively? Oh, Google Docs, I suppose you all use. Word and often 365 is a bit better. Everyone use like Evernote? Evernote? Is that the LaTeX one? Anyone use that one? That's quite good. Say again? Overleaf. Yeah, yep. Overleaf's a good one. It's stupid, but just any kind of repository where you could dump stuff and keep revision history of some kind, but it's not very, you need something a bit more interactive than stupid GitHub or something for that. But please, use all those tools, because again, they're all the tools that you're going to use years down the track as part of collaborating, and everyone's different, Don't be too boxed in, I think we're going to try and do LaTeX on this report with Gino I'm writing at the moment. So I can do LaTeX, flexible enough to written some papers with some other colleagues using LaTeX. LaTeX. All right, come on, more questions. Come on, I'm just waffling on here. giving you some gems.
I want to waffle a little bit. Don't know if you can hear me. Online.
Yep.
So the submission portal, now Adrian's created that on LMS for the requirements review document. I enabled that yesterday, so rather than wait till Friday and telling me it's not working, can people please have a look at it and explore, make sure it's working. We're using previously untried, untried by us, right?
Yeah, I think the way it's set up, you can upload as many times as you like.
Yes, yeah.
So just upload the requirements document. Who cares? You know, it's just.
We'll just look at the last one.
Yeah, and we just look at the last item that you upgraded, and that's normally great, right? But at least you can go through the process of, okay, do I know how to do it? Blah, blah, blah. And I think it's one person,
One report per group.
one report per team.
Right,
You just
so,
need to-
so not everyone needs to submit in your group, right? You nominate one person.
Yep.
So
And we are trialling something new as part of the subsequent week to your report. So,
yes,
so you should be aware of, again, this is why you don't talk to people from last year, because we keep changing things to keep you on your feet. But so as part of this whole, you know, what engineers do is they read and give other people feedback, which is what you should be doing within your own team. Subsequent to the submission of your report, your job will be to download, so you will be assigned another team's report, and your job will be to critique that report in an engineering fashion, in a civil and professional manner, where you read it and give them insights, right? Tell them what's good and what's not good, you know. So you're trying to help someone else do a better job, and I always find when I read someone else's work and give them feedback, my writing gets better. So, you know, the purpose of giving feedback is help someone else, but actually helps you as well. And that way, what you should end up with at the end of that week is, you know, each individual should, or each team should end up with 6 loads of feedback from various people in the unit, right? And that's a fair amount of feedback that you should be able to look at and say, oh, this was my section, and we're not identifying names in each section, right? But you'll know if you wrote a section or if you had something to do with a portion. And some comments came in about it maybe not being clear enough, or you know, it didn't make sense, or this was good, or this was bad. And you know, you need to take on board the feedback and think about, for your next report, how might you improve that? How might you do better? Go for it.
So with that document feedback then, it's each individual team member reviews a report, submits feedback, and is that due in a week from submissions, next Friday?
Yeah. So after your submission is finished, you'll have a week to you'll be assigned a random report. So it's not like so if there's 6 in your team, everyone in your team will be assigned some kind of random report. So it's not like you can talk to the person next to you and go, hey, what did you write in feedback to them so I can copy it, right? Everyone will get a different report. And then, that will be really valuable for everyone to improve their own writing. But we're also assessing your level of feedback. That is, how insightful are you? Did you treat it like a really trivial exercise and type, you know, all play and no fun makes Jack a dull boy 10,000 times into the text box and go, oh, okay, now I've completed my input, now I'm done, return, woo, I'm out of here, right? Or did you actually go, you know, in this bit here, you know, I thought this was really good, let me give you an example of what I thought was good, what I thought was bad. I mean, but it's about you critically assessing the piece with thought. So when we talk about, what are we in now, 5th year? That's the code number, it starts with a 5. There's a thing called Bloom's taxonomy, which talks about the levels of your progression through the education system. And in year 1 and year 2, you're supposed to be introduced to topics, you know, and presented with different concepts. And so there's a lot of stuff around kind of the development of understanding. The later years of your degree, your 4 and 5 year levels, are supposed to be using words like analysis and synthesis, okay? Because you've now got enough background to be able to, look at that with critical eyes and synthesize and analyze and provide feedback based on that. So that's the level of kind of feedback we're looking at, that it is insightful, that has synthesized and thought about the writing and provided feedback based on that. So please see it as an opportunity. I think it's a really interesting exercise. I think it's a win-win for everyone.
You won't get a fail mark if your comments don't match up with the marker's comment for that.
No, not relevant. Yeah, we're not going, well, the marker said this and you said that, so therefore clearly you're wrong. That is absolutely not going to happen, right? So everyone reads a piece and gets something different out of it, okay? So we're just after you being professional, civil, collegial in your feedback, and like I say, it's win-win. All right. Any last go?
Yeah, this question about the project. So
Yep.
you mentioned in the project there's a lot of different requested deliverables, like knowing the time of use, who used the equipment, location, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Does any of these things go back to, let's say you discover the command center, does those information go back to that command center?
Gallagher, all Gallagher does is it's a validation system. All the Unicard system and Gallagher, it just validates who you are. That's all it does. So you swipe your card and it goes ding, yep, that's this person. That's all it does, okay? So the system really should then be contacting some other system and saying, what does your database say about this particular system? Are they authorised to use this particular instrument, right? So all the Gallagher system is doing is just validating that this card really is a valid card within our system and it corresponds to this ID.
Essentially, it's a two-step verification. So checking this is the person from Gallagher and going to another database to check that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's 2-step or a 10-step validation. How many steps you introduce is up to you, but the information about does this person have a right to access this equipment, that database doesn't exist. Okay, there is no system. So in your system layout of some kind, you can scope out that there needs to be this system. Who delivers on that system? You could scope it out. You can make it a third-party system, but it's your choice. But conceptually, that's not anything to do with the Gallagher system. It just validates who you are, or the Gallagher Unicard. All right. And another question, up the back. Yep.
Do we need to scan the card each time we use the system? Because if we have another way to store the card details and identify the user, can we do that instead, where we don't have to scan it?
Okay, so the question goes, do we need to scan the card each time, or can we use other ways to validate the user?